Culture is energy, and energy has the power to create. It also has the power to destroy. You know, destruction, anger, frustration, blaming, shaming, that's all energy. And it destroys creativity and employee engagement. The third state is stagnation. Energy has the power to stagnate, including the energy in your own organization. You know, those meetings that go way too long, everybody's checking their watch, or that project that people were excited about, but it never went off the ground, or the way you're doing the job, the same way you've done the job for years, and you know you could be leveraging technology to do it better. My name is Margaret Graziano, and what I do for a living is I work with organizations that are at an inflection point. They're no longer creating, they're no longer innovating through a litany of reasons, and they bring me in to intervene. I'm a corporate interventionist. And we get to the root of what's in the way. This is Sam Smith. If you've read my book, Ignite Culture, we open the story with Sam Smith. This is Sam on stage in front of 350 people, apologizing for being a main source of destructive energy in his organization. You see, when Sam was a little boy, he was born in Singapore. His father, who was a serviceman, left the mom to support the kid. And the only thing the kid knew how to do is go on the street when mom was working. He became a street fighter. He was in a gang in Singapore, believe it or not. They had gangs then. And then when they moved to California, he joined a gang in Oakland. He made it through college dealing drugs. And then he got hired at would someday become my client at a foundry in Oakland. And they loved him. He was amazing. He used all that fight and all that grit and all that childhood anger to oppose forces that were causing this organization challenge. He was the king of destroying external threats. He also, unbeknownst to him, because he didn't know and he didn't even know that he didn't know, he was destroying morale. He was shaming people and blaming. And he created this divisiveness in the organization that it was us versus them. And what you see is a humble man who's taking responsibility for his impact. What my book doesn't say is shortly after this event, Sam had a massive heart attack and died. When his son called the CEO, he said, "I don't know what you did with my father, but he became loving and kind and forgiving. And whatever you did within the last couple years of his life, thank you." Sam didn't know he was bringing the energy in that organization to a brink of a massive walkout by the union. He didn't know it was him. He thought it was just more money. But the truth is, we are facing some amazing times right now, and we have to change. We have to look at what are we doing that's working, what are we doing that's not working, and we have to create what needs to be created. We have to destroy what needs to be destroyed, and we have to maintain what is working. And with that organization, with that foundry in Oakland, they needed to destroy the hostility from upper management, and therefore the hostility throughout the organization. You see, all companies are a human system. Yes, in manufacturing, you have machines, and in a foundry, you have a cupola, and you have the machines and the engines, but who's operating those are people until further notice. And people have to feel connected to the work they're doing. Because when they don't feel connected and they don't feel safe, creativity evaporates. Ingenuity evaporates. Courage evaporates. And because of the world we're living in right now, with so much volatility, so much uncertainty, so much chaos, complexity, confusion, and ambiguity, people are facing high levels of stress, burnout, and overwhelm. The stark reality is only about 36% of U.S. employees reported being engaged in the 2024 Gallup survey. 44% of the employees that took that survey said, "I am burnt out." Disengaged employees account for $1.9 trillion in lost productivity. In 2022, that would be $25 trillion of the US GDP is wasted due to lack of employee engagement. Knowing this fact of the numbers, we have to find a better way. Organizations with high employee engagement are 21% more profitable. Engaged employees are 202% more productive than disengaged employees. And highly engaged organizations have an 87% lower turnover. You see, people need their needs met at work. They spend, out of 112 waking hours, most people spend 50% of that time at work, driving to work, driving home from work, thinking about work. Would you want to spend 50% of your time in a place that had you feel crappy? No. So context, how people view where they work, how they experience it, it's decisive. It's a direct correlation to employee engagement. When Sam Smith's boss, the CEO, originally called me, he said, "Magi, we used to have amazing employee engagement. And through a series of new leaders and obstacles outside of the organization, it's been harder and harder to work here. We need to fix this." And we did. But it took getting real about what was really going on in that organization first. I introduced them to the 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness. The lowest level of effectiveness is hopelessness. When people are in a state of hopelessness, they can only be productive 5% of the time. In a state of fear, this is where people are afraid of being called out, embarrassed, shamed, blamed. They can only be 10% effective. In an environment of frustration, people can only be 25% effective. And most organizations that call me, when they do the free survey on my website, the results come back that the majority of their time, the people are below that line. They're in ineffectiveness. Now, here's where the context shifts. If you have an organization filled with courage, people believe in a future. They believe in the noble cause or the mission of the organization. And they believe that they have something to do with fulfilling that. Their own self-actualization is connected to the organization that they work with. In a state of courage, people are effective 65% of the time, just because they believe. They believe in what they're doing, who they're doing it for, and how they do it. In a state of engagement, this is what every company wants. People are effective up to 79% of the time. In engagement, people are all in. They're asking questions, they're answering questions, they're sharing information. They're not protecting their role and their identity because they're afraid someone's going to come for it. In a state of innovation, this is where all creativity happens. People are effective 89% of the time. In a state of innovation, there is no ego protecting my job or my identity. There's no silos because people are affiliating and collaborating and sharing their ideas. And it's okay to fail forward in an innovative organization. It's okay to try new things. And in an organization that fosters and cultivates synchronicity, this is an organization that's based in love and affinity. And no matter what happens, no matter what breakdowns happen, people look at those breakdowns as an opportunity to learn and grow. So, would you rather be in an organization that spends 30 to 50% of their time in a state of frustration, anger, agitation, shame, blame, fear, protection, hiding out, complacency, or hopelessness where people have just completely given up? Now, what happens to humans in a state of ineffectiveness? Those 3 bottom levels is their body is filled with cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. They're in the fight or flight or freeze or faint state of mind. The energy is contagious. It brings everyone down. It's like drinking poison water or breathing contaminated air because energy is contagious. When we're in a state of courage, engagement, innovation, and synchronicity, the energy we are bringing and the chemicals in our body is serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. Oxytocin is considered the love hormone. The same feeling you have when you're holding a baby or a puppy. Serotonin, people can eat food or brain hack to get to serotonin, but serotonin is joy. It's what has you feel happiness. And dopamine is like, yeah, let's keep doing it. What if you could manufacture that energy? What if you could cultivate and nurture that energy in your work environment? That's what we're here today for. It takes 3 powerful domains of expertise to cultivate the above-the-line energy. First, it's looking at, instead of focusing on goals, listen, I know you need goals. I know you need profit, or you wouldn't be a business, you'd be a hobby. But instead of having that the primary focus, what if you could shift it to purpose? What if the reason your organization or your department or your team existed was to fulfill a higher purpose, a noble cause? And what if the people that came to work for you felt engaged in that noble cause? What if they were all on the same team in service of that noble cause? Think about an organization like Patagonia. They sold jackets, but their noble cause was to protect the earth and do no harm. That's what I'm talking about. And they were super profitable. You ever buy a Patagonia jacket? That's not cheap. When Patagonia found out that the cotton that was making their coats was made from brutalizing the workforce, they changed the vendor. The entire operation stopped, fixed where they were sourcing their cotton from so they could live in integrity to their noble cause. Think about where you work right now, your team. Are you in alignment with a cause greater than yourself? Or is everybody just trying to make it through the day? The next domain to work in an above-the-line state is to move the people part of the organization, how you interact with each other, how you relate to one another, how you listen, how you hear, how you voice your complaints or ideas, how you give one-on-ones, how you hire, how you onboard, how people leave the organization, to shift it from friction to flow, to look at your work processes and look at your A to Z of how you deliver on your noble cause, and to find friction points, the points that make people work a lot longer than they want to, the points that have people bickering and arguing and create silos. And what if you can put those loyal, dedicated people on a mission to say, we are transforming our work from states of friction to flow? What if we could learn to talk to each other and to create and manufacture the energy of flow, the manufacturing the energy of courage, engagement, innovation, and synchronicity? When people are in a flow state, they are 200 times more productive. Problems get solved 400 times faster. New products, changes, come to fruition 180 days faster when you work in a flow state. This is the real deal. Third domain of working above the power and freedom line is to really look at and inquire into how do we move people from routine, doing the same thing over and over again, to where we tap into the collective genius of the enterprise. What are the parts of our work that we can automate? What can we use an AI agent for? What is non-core to our business that we can outsource? And how do we bring in people who are working in service of a noble cause, who will be excited to operate in their genius zone? And how do we create the environment so they can operate in their genius zone? And how do we set them up so they're in a state of genius or innovation more often than not? What's the training, coaching, what's the architecture that optimizes people in the places they work? You might be saying, that's so much. She said so much. It's so complicated. It's not. It's three things. From goals to purpose, from friction to flow in how people work and how they interact, and from routine to genius. Ask the people who work in the organization. They'll give you all the ideas in the world. You just need to provide them with training and coaching on how to make change happen. So let's talk about what gets in the way of all of this. What is causing our people stress? Volatility, uncertainty, chaos, complexity, confusion. Often we do makeshifts at work to sell another product or get a new client. Oh, we'll add this service and that feature, and we lose sight of what our core business is. And then it's so complicated to serve customers, and we say one thing on a Monday and something different on a Wednesday, or we have leaders who might not be trained to really lead people above the line to create agency, autonomy, and authority in the workplace. Or we have leaders who don't have integrity and say one thing and do another. So across the board, why are Gallup's surveys so poorly rated? Because we have systemic mistrust rampant through these organizations. And people are working because they need that money. They can't just quit to go find something better. They need that check. They need to have stability, so they stay. But they stay, but their heart and their mind disconnect. And then you have a transactional culture. So let's go a little bit deeper. The ultimate intent of your organization, the reason for being, cannot be to make money. That's a byproduct of being in business. But the reason for being has to make some kind of difference, has to bring people or places or things to a higher level of effectiveness. So let's choose to move from just counting goals to fulfilling on a noble cause, to giving people purpose for why they say they want to work there. When that happens, people tap in their intrinsic motivation to the business's motivation, to the organization's motivation, and you have alignment between the work and the why. When you create an environment that is an environment of flow, your values are actually being expressed at work. If you say trust, integrity, accountability is what you value in that environment, you're congruent. You behave in a way that emulates those values. When you cultivate an environment of flow through your values and behaviors, and you connect that to the overall intent, what you get is people who behave well as individuals and people who behave well together. The result is exceptional teamwork. When you create architecture that empowers people to move from routine to genius, that might be onboarding, that might be the way you hire, it might be the way you do one-on-ones, or how you manage, or how you set goals, or how you have company meetings, how you use people's time. When they come because their intrinsic motivation says, I want to do what you do, I want to serve, and then they get to be their highest and best self with you, what you have is unrivaled innovation. And then, of course, when you hire the right geniuses for the right reasons, because they believe in what you're doing, and you get out of their way and you create the space and the architecture for them to thrive, and you put them in an environment that's all about healthy, intentional, high performance, well, then you have intrinsic motivation every day. You don't have to motivate your people. You have to focus on cultivating an environment where they can thrive. I invite you to stay tuned for all the different newsletters and training that we bring to you. My commitment is that people at work are liberated. And my commitment is to continue to create training and resources so that you can do that every day where you work. Thank you very much.